stayed up late at the bar with us last night to come up with segment ideas for today. There's a lot of creative people, and we'll put them all to work. So we'll get started here. Look, I know on the show that we do, again on MLB Network, Clubhouse Confidential, we make sure that our main guests are the general managers or the assistant general managers, the guys who are, as we know here, the true superstars of the game. These are the brains of the outfit, and the guys who have enormous responsibility. I think we all feel this way about it. It's the coolest job in maybe the world, but it's an extraordinarily difficult job, and there's so much pressure, and there's so many decisions, and now as we see, there's so much information out there, and it's so competitive. So these guys, it takes a lot of survival skill, it takes a lot of brains, a lot of evolutionary thinking, and these guys have found themselves to be at the very top. So let's bring them up right now, and again, we'll have a question and answer, and I'll talk to them for a little while, but think of your questions that you want to ask them. Keep your questions succinct so we can get a bunch of them going. I'm sure you have a lot of questions for these guys because there's a lot to talk about. So let's first bring up, he was just promoted to this position in the off-season. He was a vital part of the White Sox organization in the front office as an assistant GM and an assistant general manager for the 2005 World Series championship team, the general manager of the Chicago White Sox, Rick Hahn. Thanks for doing a little business yesterday and give us something to talk about. We can talk to Chris Sale in a moment. Did you want to get that done like yesterday so you could talk today and have this sort of
a lot of pressure on Chris and representative to get it done.
Say, look, I got a conference. I got to give something to these people, right? Our next general manager is former GM of the San Diego Padres. He was part of the Boston Red Sox front office as an assistant GM among other positions that he had. Really the organization that showed, I think that best showed how science can beat the dark forces of mysticism. He's now the general manager of the Chicago Cubs, Jed Hoyer. Yes, there were the dark ages of baseball before there was the breakthrough. Our next GM is the general manager of an organization that's considered to be the modern prototype of sports organizations. He's built a perennial powerhouse in Texas, from the Texas Rangers, the GM of a team that won back-to-back American League championships, John Daniels. All right, Rick, let me start with you, and you guys can all answer this in the way that makes sense, because I know maybe everybody does things differently. Since we have the group that we have, Rick, let's start with this. What's the size and the scope of your analytics department? Whatever that department, if it's separate or it's not separate, describe it to us. How large is it?
You know, it is something that actually Kenny Williams set up with one of his first moves, was promoting Dan Fabian, who was a longtime baseball operations assistant in our department, to head up our analytics department and made him the head essentially of objective analysis for the club back in 2001. And under Faves, we sort of expanded both internally with a few young guys, I'd say 2 or 3 internally who work on it, and then through a number of partnerships with some of the names on that banner behind us, as well as a few outside consultants who we tend to keep a little bit on the back burner. So I think traditionally, certainly at least for the early part of Kenny's tenure, we were perceived as not emphasizing objective analysis very much, which quite frankly is a perception that I like and would prefer to continue and may be reluctant to accept this invitation today. I think it allows us to move a little more stealthily as we try to make certain acquisitions. I remember when we made the trade for Carlos Quinton several years ago, one of the more well-known objective analyst blogs on the internet wrote, the White Sox broke with tradition today and went out and acquired a young, potentially high OBP, high power impact hitter, as if we don't like chocolate and puppy dogs and Christmas like everybody else. But that's okay, because we've had other instances where our scent has been picked up on certain acquisitions that made those acquisitions more difficult. So while we tend not to hold press conferences or spend a lot of time talking about
how many guys, and not counting in yet, you have other branches, but how many guys do you have?
I would say we've probably got 5 internally that are spending.
That are full-time on that. Jed, what about you?
I'm disappointed to hear that, right? It's actually amazing how much those departments have grown. You know, when we started in Boston, we hired Tom Tippett from Diamond Mine to really create Carmine, which I know has received a lot of variety in the database there. And that was a one-person operation, and I think we were one of the first teams to really have a full-time person, you know, working on a database, being an analyst. You know, right now we're in the process of building our department. I think when all said and done, it'll probably be about a half dozen people, not including, you know, some outside consultants and things like that. But you know, it's the amount of information has really exploded. I think especially with all that FX stuff, the amount of research we need has really changed. So the idea of being at the cutting edge with a one-person department or 1.5-person department in 2003, you know, now all of a sudden we're sitting here in 2013, you know, actively building up a department, you know, to keep up with teams that have, you know, 6 to 10 people working there full time.
And I mean, I guess, is it an advantage to start from the ground up where you come in and say, okay, now we can build, as opposed to you get into a place where you're augmenting?
I wouldn't say it's an advantage. I wish it was all set up at 6 people and you walk in and it's ready to go. But at the same time, I think there are some advantages. You get to hire the people you really trust. You get to bring in you know, a lot of people. And it's amazing. You know, right now we're in the process of hiring for a director of R&D with the Cubs. And the number of incredible resumes we've gotten is just remarkable.
You're going to get a few more.
Yeah. Okay, I think most of the people probably apply. But it's just remarkable. The quality of the research we've gotten, from research just by posting the jobs, the quality of the resumes, it's remarkable. So, I mean, this is certainly an area, again, that's just exploded exponentially in 10 years.
John, what about you?
Are you actually hiring for that, or is that just free labor? I think people would be surprised. We don't actually have a formal analytics department. I think, you know, based on the perception of, you know, the backgrounds of us and some others, I think people expect to have that. We probably have about 6 or 8 guys that all have formal functions, whether it's on development, pro scouting, amateur scouting, the video department downstairs, but all of which you know, involve objective analysis into their jobs. And so we'll have different times of year. We have a couple guys here today from Matt Canola and Matt Colacci that are 2 of those guys that have other formal responsibilities. But we actually don't have anybody that's wholly dedicated to it. And we've talked about it. And I think we'll probably head in that direction, but you know, we want it to be kind of organic when we do it.
That's pretty surprising. So is it just you figuring these things out?
No, I mean,
everybody has a part of it?
Don't be modest.
Good, fine.
No, it's a little bit of everybody looks at these things. I shouldn't say everybody. A lot of guys, you know, look at it, and we want to kind of encourage is people to think outside the box and do what they're interested in. And so we do. We have one guy that's kind of came through our IT department that is in charge of putting our database together, and he works with everybody else to make sure they have the information they need. But there's nobody whose full-time job it is exclusively analytical.
All right, let me ask you this, and I'll follow up this way. When you had Yu Darvish, how hard did you work at trying to get it equivalency? Beyond that, oh, he's tall, he's got big shoulders, boy, look at his numbers in Japan, but how hard did you work at actually trying to figure out this is what he'll do?
We did do some of that. I mean, it's so hard. I mean, to base a $100 million decision on one number, no matter how much research and work you do into it. I think the bigger the decision, the bigger the resource or assets you got to put behind the decision, whether it's a trade or free agency dollars, you know, the more information that you need. And so for a waiver claim or maybe a small free agent or minor, a scout likes him, but the numbers are horrible, we'll go with it. If vice versa, if the objective analysis says that this guy's a lot better, and we have non-prospect type status on him from the scouts, we'll go with it. For a $100 million investment, we've got to go for ownership, and it's got to be a lot more than, you know, this is major league equivalency. So we did do some of that work, but we also had 12 different guys see him. We saw 40 of his starts. We watched all of his starts on video.
You saw 40 in person?
Not me personally.
Your people?
I saw
Yeah,
one,
yeah.
but yeah, we got our people saw 40 of his starts last. I mean, he was, you know, you can go back to 2006, and he was a name, a guy that was going to be coming. And to find upper rotation starters in the mid-20s is so challenging. It just about never happened. So we started putting that work in a few years earlier.
Interesting. All right. Jed, how many, and everybody jump in on this, but how many like hardcore math guys do you have, if any? And how important is that or unimportant is that? I mean, someone who's really with a hardcore math, not even an economics background, but a true math background.
We have, I'd say, one full-time, and then we have a number of consultants that we use. And that's really the biggest challenge, I find, is that, obviously, I sort of grew up with sabermetrics, you grow up analyzing stats, but there's a limit to my mathematical ability, and we have to hire people a lot smarter than us to be able to do a lot of the analysis. So right now, one plus consultants, and that's probably an area that will grow. But especially, as I mentioned before, with all the pitch effects, hit effects, field effects, I can understand that stuff. The guys that I work with can understand it, but we don't have the mathematical ability to do a lot of the research. And so I do think that hardcore mathematical ability is becoming more and more important. With this the exploding amount of information we have.
Right.
We're similar to that. The guys internally have a facility with it and are able to ask the right questions, but we got it for the hardcore math. We go outside.
Okay. John?
Pretty much the same thing. I mean, Matt can't really add, so we more there for their looks. The one guy that's building the database has pretty high-end mathematical ability. Everybody can handle it to a certain level, but we do have to go outside for the extreme end. We don't have anybody that's we lock in the back room and pump out information.
I wonder too, because with all the guys that I talk to and all the different things, I'm sure when you read different things and you see things and you're like, okay, that's great. What does this mean and what do I do with it? What are the challenges, Jed, on that? When you have someone who is far beyond your ability mathematically, how do you translate to that something tangible that you can do?
I think you have to ask a lot of questions. And Rick even mentioned them. I think we all have enough ability with that to ask the right questions and to get to those answers. And I think you just have to pound away at a certain formula until you really feel comfortable with it. There's a lot of different proprietary things we've attempted to come up with, and we just never became comfortable. And to me, if you're going to use a proprietary number, if you're going to be comfortable with that number, you have to be able to use it all the time. You have to be able to make that a key part of your evaluation. And if you don't feel comfortable with the inputs or don't feel comfortable with the formula, then you're never going to do that. So I think we have to ask enough questions and dig down deep enough so it becomes something that we just trust intuitively. Like, this is a number that we trust, we know where it comes from, we trust the person that put it together, and we go for it. And I think if you can't do that, in some ways it just becomes noise, because if you don't trust the number, then why is it part of your database?
Great.
Similar to what Jed said, I think one of the challenges is I don't want to get a report on my desk from someone, as John said, from a back room saying, here's what the numbers say. We want the numbers to be part of the entire conversation with our scouts, with our coaching staff, and all the decision makers in the room. So one of the challenges is being able to translate what the number says into a way that's accessible for everybody in the room. So we try at times to translate it to runs or translate it to an index where you go from 100 and up is better, or below 100 is bad, similar to ERA plus or something like that, so that they can be part of the entire conversation. It's not just, well, here's the report I got, and it says these three, here's the order we should go get these guys. I want them in the room advocating for their guys in a way that they can be rebutted and challenged.
How about you?
I think Rick hit it head on. I think that's kind of the approach we've taken where we want. It's part of their job, but not the only part of the guy's jobs. And so when we get a report on a player, it factors in everything. And when our pro scouting department will put together, hey, here's the report on the guy. I assume, I take for granted that they've already run it through those filters, analytic filters, but they've also already talked to our scouts. Are you guys seeing this? If not, why? You see this guy make adjustments, changes? Has he matured? If we talk to people around him, is there a reason that we're seeing some improvement or decrease in his performance? I think the challenge for us, and I think the decision makers, is you then have to not just translate it from the paper to make a decision, decisions, but from the decision to the field staff, and the guys that are going to put these players in position to succeed, and so they understand what are the strengths, how do we come to this decision. For me, that's probably one of the bigger challenges.
Let me write to something else. I was going to go somewhere, but let's go there. Translating this to the field. Everybody knows who your managers are. How does that work, and how effective do you think your organization is in all your ideas that you have, your organizational philosophy, and then the guy in the dugout and the coaching staff implementing that?
We actually use a lot of it in our advanced scouting reports.
Just get like a packet, or how does that work?
We've got 3 different guys that go ahead and put our advanced scouting reports together. We do it differently over the course of the year. For most of the season, we just do it off video, so we don't actually have somebody out on the road following these guys the way that these bunch of different vendors by video and by data broken down, and we can analyze it in-house, both visually and also on the back end. So then they put together a comprehensive report, and our staff knows a lot of these players. They've been competing against them for a period of time, so we have some track record with it. And then every series we'll have a meeting with the staff, with the advanced scouts that have put all the information together. They're looking at it both ways. So it's both looking at the video and saying, hey, I'm noticing these kind of trends. Mike Maddox has a ton of video work himself, breaking down hitters, kind of breaking down swings, and then also the backside of his percentage that he swings in the zone, out of the zone, different counts, et cetera. And so the challenge for our advanced scouts is to boil that down. So you have a sheet of paper with just too much information on it. It's his job to say, hey, here are the 3 or 4 things that we need to focus on with these guys. Communicate that to the staff, and then the staff then takes those 3 or 4 things into a meeting with the players and delivers that.
And how effective do you think that is? How good are they implementing that, your ideas?
I think pretty good. I think one thing that you've got to realize putting those reports together is that it's not the gospel. It's not a guarantee, and you guys are constantly making adjustments. So there are certain things that certain very basic platoons and matchups that are readily available to everybody that you want to turn this guy around, or things. I think we're great at those things. I think there's still some level of skepticism on some of the a little more finer print. And like anything in life, once they see it in play and see it work, they're more accepting.
I don't think you guys have to answer that question. You answered it so well. I don't think you have to answer that, so you're off the hook on that. But you had Ozzie Guillen and now Robin Ventura. Tell us about then, because I found to just to throw in, when I'm talking to, I work with Buck Showalter a number of years, and now I work with Larry Boa, and every manager will just be, instead, they don't put up a wall on the analytics. They just want more context. So I don't think those guys, I think there's kind of that misconception of, that, don't tell me what I don't need to know. It's like, no, well, how many outs are there? Who's on deck? Who's on deck after that? How many pinch hitters are left? But how, going through Ozzie Guillen and now Robin Ventura, tell us anything about that process.
I don't think they're very different at all. This will come as a great shock to people in the room, but Ozzie was always open for a good debate and a good argument. That we know. Exactly. So when you would bring information to Ozzie that, for lack of a better description, is strictly numbers-based, he wouldn't just turn around and toss it away. He would sit down and he would extensively engage and challenge you on these numbers. He might not agree with you. Odds are he wasn't going to. But he would at least engage in the debate and conceivably work some of that into his decision-making. We saw over the years the way he would deploy guys or certain defensive things he did. He would use it. Robin, his approach is obviously quite different. But is extraordinarily open-minded. We are really fortunate to have Robin and Don Cooper and Mark Perrin and Jeff Manto, as well as Super Joe McEwing, who are not only open for debate, but they want the information and push for more information. They want to know why we're setting something up a certain way. And they will tell you that when they disagree, when they want different or more information. Again, part of what each of us, I'm sure, try to foster within the organization is not only that open debate, but the respect for what an individual brings to the table. Just as if in a certain game situation, Robin goes against what the numbers are, but it's what his gut told him to do, based on what he knows from a health standpoint or what he sees in the player's eye. We have to give him the latitude to do that. That's his job. Now, we may have a discussion about it afterwards, and we're going to want to know the rationale, but he needs the latitude to do that. Just as when we bring something from an objective analysis side to the table, he understands that that individual has a job to do and needs the latitude to make the case and make the argument. So I really like where we are right now, and I don't think we were too far away from this with Ozzy, because he was open to that kind of thing too.
So, Jed, you went through from the Grady Little years to where you can handpick your own guy. What are has there been what I would see as kind of a real shift in what a modern manager is? Tell us about that.
I think so a little bit, but at the same time, I do feel like, from Grady Little, to Tito, now with Bud Black in San Diego, and now Dale, I think it's really our job to do a good job of filtering the information. JD alluded to it. I think if you just provide them an unlimited amount of information and say run with it, it becomes overwhelming. I think we have to do a good job of here are the 5 points on this series that we want to make, and that way they have a chance to do that. Because I think if you overload a manager, or if the players see that the front office is down there, the front office is kind of pulling on the puppet strings, now all of a sudden that manager's undermined with 25 guys and the coaching staff that he needs to lead. And it's our job to make sure that we can empower the manager. And here are the things that are important in the series. Here are the things that our advanced scouts saw. Here's what the data says, and then go manage the game. And I always use the example of, Theo and I have probably watched, 1,500 games together. We disagree all the time. We'll sit there and argue about a pitching move up in the suite. And all I care about as a GM is that when I go down and talk to Dale or Bud Black after the game, they have a reason they did it. They have a real rationale. I didn't like that matchup, or, so-and-so was sore today. That's why I didn't do it. I think that's what we all want, is that a well-thought-out, intelligent reason for a decision. Because we're not always going to agree. Theo and I can disagree constantly. We have the same information, but we come to the decision differently every night.
Is there a better way of doing it? Again, this goes back to the 1870s when you had one man who was the skipper, and should you have this comes up because I talked to this Bill guy about the Rockies, and for some reason it's controversial among players to have the GM as an office in the clubhouse. At least he did last year. Why wouldn't you want help? There's so much a manager has to do. Is this kind of an outdated mode where it's one man leading the charge? Should it be a whole group? It's a hard job, right? Should it be more people?
Extraordinarily difficult job, and I think you've even seen in recent years with the clubs adding a second hitting coach, the fact that there is a need for more support in certain areas. And as Jed alluded to, is sort of the outside analytics get introduced with the scouting report and the video, you are providing them with a ton of information, which if you don't boil down is going to overwhelm them and paralyze them. Because there's arguments, that's what the decisions we make on a given day, there's arguments every which direction. So you have to help prioritize. In terms of, is it outdated, the model of having a manager with the authority in game? For me, no. It works. You need someone. The job isn't just 7 to 10 each night. As important, and a lot of Ozzy's strengths, in fact, were from 10 to 7 after the game was over until the next game, in terms of communication and having guys know their role and preparing the team for that game. And to add multiple voices to that, I think makes things difficult. I like our bench coach or pitching coach debating with Robin during the game about a specific decision. That is something that's necessary, given the volumes of information. But to then have different voices introduced throughout the day, I personally, maybe it's outdated or maybe it's old school, but I personally like having that singular voice leading the ship.
Guys?
I tend to agree with Rick there. I think I started as a fan, and I think we all love to debate the managerial moves, and just like Jed's saying, we're sitting up there in the suite or the stands, or just cursing under our breath, sometimes over our breath. Same type thing, debating the moves. And I think what we miss is an incredibly hard job, being a manager.
Well, that's what I mean. Should that guy have 2 or 3 people behind him with the books, or making it, those decisions much better?
I think you can go about it this way. What we try to do is take some of the peripheral take a lot of those things off of his plate. As far as having a group of people behind that, I think for me that depends on who those people are, who's choosing those guys. What we don't want is like this group thing, because we're not. I mean, Jed will tell you, you're sitting there saying, I can't believe he's making this move, and then the guy gets the punch out or he gets the hit or whatever you want. You're like, oh, great move. And so we don't know. I mean, the percentages are so fine between the right move and the wrong move. And I think that's what people were probably surprised. I know they were in Texas when I heard Watch originally in 2007 because we're such different people, different backgrounds, different way of looking at the game. That's what drew me to them. Kind of like what Rick's saying with Ozzy, that dynamic personality that has it's not just those 3 hours. It's the rest of the day. Motivating them, getting them to understand their roles, and there has to be the ability to synthesize the information, give it down. I think it's on us to make sure that information is used.
Let me ask the question then. What's the manager of the future there? 30 years from now, 40 years from now, who's running the club day to day down below, and how?
That's a really good question. I think one of the trends we've seen, I think with Robin, the Diamondbacks tried out with AJ Hinch. I think some of the other candidates for jobs have been just off the field, fairly young. Guys like Brad Ossis in an interview, Mike Lowell has been rumored. I wouldn't be surprised at all if that's part of the future. I think that as the money has exploded in the game, I think some of these guys that made $50, $60 million, they may really want to manage or be a bench coach for a major league team. They might not want to ride the buses in the South Atlantic League for the whole summer. So I think you may see some guys that are more recently off the field, a little bit younger, become managers. I know in some ways the three of us are a good example. I think 15 years ago, GMs were much older. That shifted a little bit younger. I wouldn't be surprised if you saw the manager job shift a little bit younger, closer to former players, but not quite as far, and maybe not with the same length of minor league managing experience in the past.
We had Jerry Capoto on yesterday in this conference. One thing that made my head perk up was he said the most important part of my day, my job, is managing risk. That's his mindset going through, and you guys are nodding. What is the most important part of your job? Like what can you tell us? What on a minute to minute, hour to hour basis? What is the biggest part of your job?
I probably look at it a little more simple, kind of managerial side of what we do. I think it's hire the best possible people and let them do their jobs. Make sure they have a voice and seat at the table and are incorporated into the decisions.
So it's more administrative, and
I think
that's not a bad thing. By the way,
it's leadership. It's team is creating a team and getting the most out of it. Whether that's on the field or off the field. For me, that's make sure we have the best possible people in place and allow them to do their jobs.
And that everything is humming along on a daily basis. Jack?
Not to parent JD, I think our most important job is to make sure our processes are really good. If we're going to go to ownership and recommend they invest $100 million in a player, we should be expected to provide a hell of a binder that's scouting reports, video, analytics. And ultimately, we're investing, and I think that you can't invest well unless you have a great process, and so you can't develop those processes without great people. But I don't want to parrot what he said, so I really do think that making sure that whether it's how you use scout and draft, how you do things in player development, how you do things medically, making sure that when you go to bed at night, you know that the decision's been well made. We're going to be wrong, and we're betting on human beings. There's no doubt that we're going to miss because of that. But to me, the misses are okay, and they let you sleep at night if you know the process was really good. If the process was shoddy, you cut corners or didn't hire the right people, I think that's what really keeps you up at night.
pointed, but is your job fun?
Yeah, it's a lot of fun. It really is. It's a dream job. Kind of like the manager has, I'm not saying it's the media, but the manager has the things he has to do, the press conference before. There are a lot of things like that with our jobs that, that you would, perfect world, you would choose not to have to do on a regular basis that aren't, the most enjoyable use of your time. But all in all, I wouldn't trade it. It was an unbelievable amount of fun. We get to, basically, we all have hired people that we know and didn't know, but we all develop relationships with them. And you're basically, getting a chance to help run a baseball team with a bunch of your friends. It's a pretty good time.
Everyone thinks, wow, it's going to be great, but seeing the day-to-day, I'm thinking, are you aware of the pressures? Are you aware of, I can't even imagine the enormity of thinking of not just your major league clubs, that must be fun, but then you got a whole, all the other teams, all the other people that are depending on you. I'm just even hearing over the last day, I don't think I think of all the minor league teams and everybody coming up through your system and all the reports that are coming through, because I'm not living it day to day.
That's the best part. I'll tell you, I guarantee there's a losing streak going on, you're not playing well. We're in, Daytona or Hickory, or that's where you find out.
Get down there.
That's just pure baseball. That's what you get away from.
Jed, is it fun?
Gave the answer really well. And I always think, no matter how bad things are going, no matter what brush fires come up, and I can say, in all honesty, I can't wait to get to work in the morning. It is fun. You're working with like-minded people on something that, if I had a real job, I'd be sitting there, I would be, I'd be looking at stats in the morning, I'd be, probably playing fantasy baseball. I grew up, scoring, doing a fantasy league when I was 11 years old, scoring it by hand, play baseball through college. This is what I love to do. So for me, as much hard work as it is, late nights, all those different things, it's all what I love to do. So, I feel really fortunate.
Do you still play fantasy baseball?
No.
I'm thinking, I probably want to be in league with you, but I'd be interested to know your decisions. Who are your sleepers?
No, you can't complain. We have a great job. It can be stressful and difficult at times, but it's what we want to do.
Rick, what about you?
That's fundamentally the thing. We are all very fortunate to be in the situation we're in. Is there stress? Yeah. Is there even more stress than I anticipated over the last 5 months than there was in the previous 12 years? Absolutely. And the time, every so often I at least take a step back and realize that my time in this chair is going to be short, whether it's 1 year, or 10, or 15, or whatever. It's only going to be a brief period of time. And if we can't enjoy this opportunity, this unique opportunity that many of us aspire to since we were teenagers or earlier, then we're doing it wrong. So while we certainly, I don't think any of us, or I'm guessing none of us, enjoy the wins as much as the losses hurt, which would be the one thing I'd love to try to find a way to correct in terms of my own internal balance. We're extremely fortunate to be able to do this.
Well, good. I'm glad you're having fun. I would hope. I would just wonder. It's almost like when you're describing the manager. Anytime I personally know a manager and I kind of walk through their day, I'm amazed at how difficult it's got to be. Just suddenly seeing the press from the other side, fans, without even getting to blogs and everything else. It's brutal. Do you guys have a lot of questions? Are you? I can do this all day. I have one last question, then we'll get to it. Everybody get warmed up and start to think. Rick, let me start with you. Give me, instead of asking excluding the people on this panel, who's the best GM in the game, give me a GM that you think is really, really good.
Oh boy, there are really a ton of them. It sort of depends on, everyone has a different situation they're dealing with. What Terry Ryan does in Minnesota, given their resources, is extraordinarily impressive, as is Andrew Friedman, although his approach obviously is very different from Terry's, or at least perceived to be very different from Terry's. Given Billy's track record of success and the way he is sort of mainstream and popularized a lot of the things that other offices were doing, he deserves the world credit and admiration. I think for us, in our situation, we try to take the best from our competitors and make them our own and try to improve the best we can. I'm replacing the guy who argues was the most successful GM in White Sox history. There's a lot of what Kenny did, how he approached things that we're going to continue and have continued and
Jed, who's really good out there?
Well, I think that Rick's right that you have to take everyone in context for what they're trying to do, they're building, and they're trying to win now. But I always think it's important, let's say my leanings might be more similar in my thought process to, say, Andrew. I think Andrew's fantastic. But at the same time, I look at, what Ryan Sabian's done in San Francisco, I look at what Walt Jockey's done in Cincinnati. And, they might not use the exact same style that I would have, but they've been wildly successful. And I think you always have to remember that there is more than one way to skin a cat in this job. And if you only have one leading, and if you only focus on one group of people or one thought process, I think you're really shortchanging yourself. So I always try to think, okay, that's not a move I would have made, but let's try to dig inside and see why this guy, who's been very successful, made that move. So I think there's a lot of ways to do the job. I think there's a lot of people that do it very well. And I think it's a mistake if you just focus on how one person might do it as opposed to other people that do it a different way very well.
John, who's really good out there?
These guys give such good political answers.
They tried to name every GM, so they tried to answer every one of those.
I was thinking about Andrew, but I don't want to get back to him and get to his head. So, the guy that I think was obviously he's in the Hall of Fame, like 2 years ago, Pat Gillett, was, I think, rightfully so in the Hall of Fame. You look at what he's done, does it from like every different level. What I mean by that is he scouting and development days with the Yankees, and then goes to Toronto from an expansion team, builds them up to best team in baseball in the late 80s, early 90s, wins 2 World Series, goes to the Orioles, builds them up. They go to the, I think, last 3 or 4 years that he's there, and then goes to Seattle, and in a completely different way. After Alex, Randy, and Griffey are out, and rebuilds that team, goes and gets each year 116 wins, and then goes to Philadelphia and wins the World Series again. I mean, you look like the different markets, different ownership groups, different challenges that he took on, and the one common denominator which you constantly hear about him is how well he built the organization, the types of people he brought in. He didn't clean house in any of those situations, but he got the best out of his people, treated them really well, and obviously the results of it.
How about that? Since you went on to touch and you ripped those guys, then you went to retire now. Ren Schwicke was good.
One guy doesn't get enough credit is I can't pronounce his last name, but Mo in St. Louis. John, I think it's Mozeliak or Mozeliak. I think Mo does a great, very understated, but I think he learned a lot from a lot of good people and has continued that on. I mean, they've got a ton of depth. It's a big league club. You talk to people, they like working there. They think outside the box, but yet they don't ruffle the feathers. They do a hell of a job.
First of all, great questions. Let's hear it for these guys.